Politics is a good thing, but with the attendant intricacies and the many sound bites, it gets confusing. At Adaba 88.9 FM, it is our job to sift through the noise, helping you make sense of it all. This is why we welcome you to our world, where we help make politicians accountable to you.
We're really glad to be here again. Thank you very much for joining us on another edition of Public Square, a program that discusses topical issues from the standpoint of the people. And yes, today we will be discussing another very interesting topic, hopefully interesting to you as well. And I have my studio guest here already. But before we get down to today's BOD, like they say, let's quickly take some of the headlines that make the rounds during the week, like we always do. Like we started that last weekend. That will be the culture on the program from now onwards. So from the Nigerian Tribune of Tuesday, 2nd of February, 2021, I'll take a few headlines from there, and I have other dailies here with me as well. From the Public Square this week. Right, from the Nigerian Tribune of Wednesday, 3rd of February, Northern elders to Fulani return to North if ejected from South. Okay, that's an update on the persistent herders-farmers clashes in Nigeria. Reps to begin probe of 83.9 billion naira COVID-19 funds. That's from Nigerian Tribune of February 2nd. That's a Tuesday. And of course, from the same day, Sunday Go in Yewa vows to work with Ogun government on herders' menace. EFCC docks P&ID director, also from that very day. Constitution review, Senate committee reviews 2014 confab report, receives 60 bills, 2050 memoranda. Federal government extends NIN-SIM linkage deadline by 8 weeks. Fayemi to Chatham House. Nigeria mobilized over $95 million to combat COVID-19. Talking politics, Nigerian Tribune of Thursday, 4th February, that's this morning, repeated APC membership registration unnecessary. That's credited to Akode. And on the 2023 election, no plan to field Jonathan, APC. FEC approves 20 private universities. All right, all these headlines you find on the dailies for today, particularly in Nigerian Tribune. And it's on that note that I would introduce my studio guests. I have Mr. Alan Shore, who is the media aide to the Deputy Governor of Ondo State. Thank you very much for coming, Mr. Shore.
Thank you. Good morning, people of Ondo State.
We're meeting for the first time this year, so
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Compliments. I also have a gentleman who is always here. Whenever we call him, he's always ready to oblige. That's Mr. Johnson Alabi. He's a PDP member in Ondo State.
APC.
No, APC?
Yes.
I'm new to that story. When did that happen?
In Nigeria, you hardly can know the party anybody
belongs. So
sometimes it's as quick as a twinkle of an eye.
I really needed to ask.
Yes.
And I'm sorry about that misinformation. He's not an APC member, according to him.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much for joining us on the program.
You're welcome.
The last time I spoke with you, you were in the PDP.
Yes, I was. And, just like my brother said, in Nigerian kind of politics that we do, you see a lot of irregularities here and there. And when you try to air your voice and it can be heard loud in the place you are, then you go to a place where you think you can be recognized.
I mean, that would be a story for another day.
Yeah.
But I've taken a few headlines from the dailies this morning, and I'm sure you heard when I was trying to trail those stories. First, let's start with Mr. Ashore. Which of these headlines really catches your attention?
I'm really, really interested in this. Northern Elder to Fulani, return to the North. Because the truth of the matter is that the herders and their leaders, they have nothing to lose. I've been to the North. I did my NYSC in Bauchi. They have vast land. They have all it takes to succeed. All that their leader need is to invest in its people. For instance, it's not even ideal for them moving from. In fact, there's no header that should move from one local government to another. Let alone people trek all the way from the north to the south. No decent shelter, no decent food, no decent clothing.
But there has been this discussion in the public space. I call it a sort of controversy that no one has the right whatsoever to eject anybody from any part of the country. It's a constitutional right to live wherever they want to be and to, do their business as much as it's legal.
I'm going to tell you that, I'm a lawyer. The freedom of movement as enshrined in the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999, as amended, does not include freedom of animals.
Okay.
So it talks about freedom of movement of human beings, not animals.
Okay. That I think we would have to to ask you other questions regarding that some other time. But before we go to the proper discussion, let me ask Mr. Alabi what his interest is.
Yes. When my brother mentioned the issue of the herders, I just smiled because it also caught my attention. I see this herding as individual business in Nigeria. Just like every other person who pursue their businesses here and there, we expect that herders also should pursue their business and not necessarily making their own business be a hindrance to the peace of another fellow. We have been talking of having ranches, but these people prefer to do it the other way. Just like Mr. Showore just mentioned, if you get to the north, you see the kind of massive land these people have. If they want to graze their cattle, I think they could better do that in the north there. Nobody is saying Fulani must quit our environment, but the moment their stay here begin to constitute insecurity to the people, maiming people, killing people, raping our women, then we will say no to it. Let everybody maintain the status quo by getting down to their own area.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. Would have to stop the discussion there. We have a lot to do on the program this morning. We would also hope to have a former head of service in Ondo State to join us in the course of the program, and we hope that he would be here before the program ends. Today on Public Square, what we would be looking at is something that has been in the public space for a while, and a lot of people have been reacting on this particular issue. We'll go on a short break. We'll be back to introduce today's topic. So recently, workers have been complaining about the recent salary regime in Ondo State, adopted by the state government for whatever reasons. We'll find out in the course of the program today. If you've been following the events as they unfold, you'll realize that for some months now, particularly towards the end of last year, I think in November, this 50% regime, salary regime in Ondo State started properly across board, but it's been on since February 2020 in the Local Government and Teaching Service Commission. But let us find out some of the reasons government has for this, because I spoke with the SA2, Mr. Governor on Labour Matters, that's Mr. Olabisi. I gave us some reasons to find out if these reasons are tenable enough. And I also spoke with the NLC chairman in Ondo State. He has something to say as well. But first, let me introduce my third guest in the house, former head of service in Ondo State, Mr. Temidayo. Thank you very, very much for coming, sir.
Thank you very much, moderator.
It's nice to have you around.
Thank you very much.
Okay, quickly, let's get down to business. Let's start this way. I spoke with Mr. Olabisi. I think we should open the discussion with that, and then I will be back to continue. Let's find out why government is paying Ondo State workers 50% of their salary.
For now, there is really nothing Labour can do other than to follow, to accept what the governor has even graciously done. The fault is not his, neither is it of any one of us.
So now you're saying that the fault is not that of the governor. Whose fault is it? What is responsible for that new development? Is because of the unexpected higher deductions made at the federal allocation. Okay.
And you know very well that most, if not all, states depend on that fund, and the fund is no longer coming. Do you get it? The fund is no longer accommodating all the essentials of government. The governor has said it several times, and it is not peculiar. It is not known only in Ondo State. It's affecting most states in the country, and the Labour people, our people, my people, they have accepted what the governor has introduced. Do you get it? Because they have been convinced that it wasn't sheer hatred. It wasn't a mistake. And it is not peculiar to Ondo State. Okay, now that you're saying, you're making it sound like workers have accepted that 50% salary payment. I had a discussion. They have been tolerant. That's what I mean. Okay, our channel had a discussion with the current Labour leader in Ondo State, and his position does not really seem to be in tandem with what you just said. He says they do not understand why government will be paying 50% of their salary at this point when everyone is faced with the reality of, different expenses, school fees for children. It's just too early in the year for workers to be experiencing such. That's according to him. But now you're making this. There is nothing anybody can do about that for now. The earlier we accepted what is on ground and ask for more, the better.
Okay, for how long will this continue?
Sincerely, I wouldn't know.
Okay, that was the voice of Mr. Olabisi, State Governor on Labour Matters, and he's been able to highlight some of the reasons for the recent 50% salary payment to Ondo State workers. Now, we have somebody who is still in government to, I had to play that so we could set the tone for the discussion. Would you agree totally with what Mr. Olabisi said?
Well, thank you. I vehemently disagree with him, because even when I was following his tone is almost like that of hopelessness. There's nothing anybody can do. It affects us. One, it does not affect. There's the funds are coming. He said the funds are no longer coming. Which funds? Are you talking about federal allocation?
He's talking about the federal allocation.
When the prices of crude are increasing daily at the international market? Are you talking about the IGR that Mr. Governor has said has increased from the paltry 600 to 700 million to 2 billion? So it's a complete misinformation, with due respect to him, because it's equally a blackmail on Nigeria as a nation. Why did you say the funds are no longer coming? Which funds are you talking about? Is it I don't know. So it is unacceptable, and the tone equally contains some kind of threat that there's nothing Labour can do. My brother, my sisters, Labour Union can do a lot. The people can do a lot, because it has to do with our lives. Presently now, the doctors in Ondo State are on strike. Do you know the implication of that? Those whose wives are pregnant, they have to be delivered of their baby. So their life is in jeopardy. Those who have, this is in the middle of pandemic, the second wave is coming and doctors are on strike. And this is the second time doctors will be on strike at the middle of serious pandemic. So it calls for challenge, but The point I want to stress most is that people can do a lot. The labor union, they must come out from their shell and not be intimidated. I read their very watery statement, although that statement was not signed by anybody in particular, in person. They just say organized labor. There is no such name in Ondo State called organized labor. But it's a way, that statement ostensibly written by the government and handed over to the labor. There's nobody like that. That's a misinformation. Does it mean that labor don't have chairman in Ondo State? We have NSC, we have TUC. So which one is organized labor? Exactly.
By organized labor, it means it's
somebody must sign. There must be a human being who will sign a statement. Okay, for instance, I sign as a chairman of NSC or signed by chairman of labor, NSC and TUC. That's why you issue a complete statement. The statement that is nothing like that.
Okay,
that's
now
an invalid document.
Let's allow ourselves to understand the intricacies of government vis-a-vis identify with the yearnings of the labor exactly in Ondo State. Now that's our focus this morning. I have Mr. Oluwasegun, who is really in that circle. He understands the workings of government and labor, and in a situation like this where there have been, agitations here and there by workers of Ondo State regarding the payment of their salary. And the government on the side is trying to make workers understand that there's absolutely nothing anyone can do about it. There's paucity of funds, and that's the best they can offer at the moment. What do you think should be done? How should labor go about this?
Well, I think that before government decided to pay, and before workers also accepted what government offered, I suppose they must have looked into the papers, into the books. So if government says, for example, that this is how much it received from the federal government, that must have been corroborated. And also, if government says this is how much it is making, maybe from internal sources, I expect also the labor to have gone into that, to have satisfied themselves before accepting what government offered. So I think there is some credibility in what the essay to the governor said. I couldn't have said what he said if he wasn't sure, and if the workers themselves were not sure that what he said was the right thing.
Like I said, we had a discussion with the NLC chairman in Ondo State. I'll be playing that voice very soon, so we can understand the position of NLC at least, if not the organized labor. At least NLC has something to say on that particular development. But before we go there, Mr. Alabi, at every point in time that government has issues with finance, when there's paucity of funds, when government does not have enough allocation, like they call it on the federal level, government always makes it the workers really are at the receiving end. They dump the bulk of it at the doorstep of workers. Why should it always be like that?
Well, the situation on ground is actually very regressive, and the happenings now, just like the essay to the governor had mentioned, is not peculiar to our state. And before the government will come out with this kind of a position, you will discover that it must have tried every other means to see that things work out. I want to disagree that the whole thing drops on the table of the workers alone. As I speak to you, I know that this same government also had difficulty in paying their contractors, some of their contractors. So it is not only the issue of workers alone.
Contractors are also workers.
Yeah. You call them workers,
not civil servants, but they're also workers.
Yes, in this context, we are referring to the people under the organized
on government payroll.
On the government payroll. But the situation is that, when we look at the papers and we see the amount of money coming into the state, a lot of people who have not been in government will just get up and begin to say all manner of things that 3 billion is coming. If they begin to do the breakdown of the 3 million, you will discover that what is actually coming in, it's just unfortunate that this kind of a situation is coming at this very crucial time when people are in their need of money to meet a lot of things at the same time. But just like Daddy here said earlier on, before that position, before the workers would have accepted this position, then they must have sat with the government. The government must have been able to explain to them in total how all these things are playing out. And I want to believe, just like the position of the government on this matter, they said they believe that in no distant time that all these things were going to be managed and it will get back, to bounce back the way we expected that it should be. So for the purpose of industrial harmony, I think the workers have been tolerant enough to accommodate the government. And when all this kind of a thing begin to happen, we should all come together and see how to, how to go into it and come out well and stronger.
Well, before now, there have been reports that the governor usually borrow to augment. We have somebody who would either allude to that, or whether you would say it is true or not. That's what I'm trying to say. The governor had been borrowing to augment the salary of workers before now, but then after probably accumulated debts regarding to the whole situation, the government has decided not to borrow at all again to augment salary. Do you think that's a wise decision to make or not, Mr. Ajose?
I think that government should always borrow to pay workers. Workers are important. As a matter of fact, if they are not paid, I do not see how government wants to perform. And when you talk of workers, don't forget that they have a lot of responsibilities too. They have to keep their families, they have to educate their children. And the workers we are talking about are not just a few people here and there. We are talking of teachers. Your school system will be affected. We are talking of the health sector. Your doctors and nurses will not be paid. And so if you go to the hospital, there will be nobody to attend to you. So it's an important thing. I believe workers should be paid. I believe that if government has to borrow money for the purpose of paying them, so be it. When workers are not paid, if for any reason they are not paid, it affects the entire society. Because at that stage, the society will be going down. Because workers will not be devoted. I do not expect people who are not paid in time or paid at all to go to work punctually or to go to work at all.
Okay.
They have to fend for their families.
Okay, bearing in mind that the welfare of workers is actually important because workers are pivotal to the economy in general. It's a chain. I don't earn salary. There's no way I'm going to make purchases. Do you think, as somebody who is still in government, do you think that it is wise of government not to want to look the way of borrowing to augment the salary of workers?
Well, that again is not very correct information that government has been borrowing. Ondo State is an oil producing state, so we have enough. Let me tell you.
You're saying the government has not been borrowing?
We have not been borrowing. This government has been. What
but that's the information we have in the public space.
Let them come with the figure. How much they get from federal allocation? Then how much is the workers' salary bill? Let us put it side by side. Let me tell you this. We must know the size of the problem. Let us assume, without conceding, that 1 month salary is not enough. 1 month allocation is not enough to pay the salary of worker. Are you now saying that 2-month allocation will not be enough to pay worker salary? We are talking about this. This government is paying salary of November 2020 in January 2021. That is at the state level. And don't forget, it's equally unfortunate that the labor union leader have not been calculating and let the government know that they are owing workers in Ondo State 4 months. We inherited 7 months from Dr. Oluwasegun. We paid 5, so we have 2 to go. Then, yes, I'm talking authoritatively. I have the figures with me. We inherited 7 months. August 2017.
6 months.
7.
Wait.
August.
6 months.
6 months.
Was what we have.
August 2017. That was the last time we could pay before he left. We took over government on 24th of February. No salary was paid between August 2017 and 2016 to February. So if you calculate, you have August, September, October, November, December, January, February. That's 7 months. So we pay 5 at the federal level and state level. We now have 2 to go. At the local government level, we paid 4.5. It still remains 20%. So at the state level now, the government is owing workers 4 months.
It's even
In Adekunle Ajayi University, it's more than that. In Owo, we have even lost calculation base because it's more than 8 months. Are you now saying that for 8 months we have not been collecting allocation? Are you now saying that, look, it's a misplacement of priority? If government understand that the primary objective of the government is the welfare of the people. So if in a whole month you collect federal allocation and you are not paying any worker, so where did the money go? Where's our money? People must begin to ask questions because this is how problems started in Nigeria. And people are not talking. You organize a labor leader, maybe you just browbeat them, intimidate them, and you come out and say there is paucity of funds. How?
Well, the reason you're here, somebody who is still in government, is so you could attest to some of these things and give us fact that we need to hear. I tried my best to bring Mr. Ishijola here, but he insisted on not coming for the reasons best known to him. It would have been so nice to have somebody who is actively in the business of government to be here this morning. But be it as it may, as of December, according to information that we have, 2.3 billion naira accrued to the state coffers as allocation after deductions, and the salary of workers.
What is deducted? You see, this is why I don't like government officials giving half information. Don't tell us after deduction. Tell us how much that you get from the federal allocation. Then you tell us the deduction. The fair deduction should be worker salary.
Now let's even talk about since it's a very broad issue actually, because if we must talk about paying workers salary, there's no way we would not want to touch on the issue of IGR, which should be really looked into to augment the funds that accrue to the coffers of state governments. Now we have a lot of people talk about the issue of infrastructure, seaports, which could open the state to investors and all of that. What do you think government should do better to ensure that at times like this, where there are exigencies and all, they could look inwards and fund the state without having to depend solely on the federal allocation, Mr. Alabi?
Well, just like we said earlier, the situation is an unfortunate situation. You have just mentioned to us what accrued to Ondo State in December. And if I'm not missing what, in January we had about 3.5 billion. And when you look, when we are talking about salaries of workers, we are not just talking about state workers alone. You talk about the workers at the local government level. Local government,
they have their own allocation too.
The issue of teachers, local government staff is a different ball game entirely.
Yeah.
Like I told you, since February 20, I think we have to open the polls this morning for people to call in. Since February 2020, they have been on half salary. That's almost a year.
Now let me go to precisely what you asked. You see, I'm also of the opinion that governments are different states should not depend on the allocation solely on the allocation from the federal government. I am a believer of industrialization and all the things that could generate revenue for the state. Now, when we begin to talk about all these things, people talking about this, talking about that, it doesn't just happen in a day. Even though today, if we build the seaport today, we won't begin to make profit from it immediately. But I want to charge the government today that we have to begin to work things out on how to increase our IGR. You know, several days when I move about town, I see a lot of things that the government could turn into revenue, but they are just left down there and nothing is happening to them. I want to tell you, because Ondo State, some people call it civil servant state, the IGR we generate also come from these same people who are not earning salary. And when these people don't earn salaries, the few traders in town don't get anything. Even when the government gets to them, you can't get any tax from them. So invariably, you discover that the IGR also drops. So this is a very serious trend that we are going through. But I'm just praying that God will help us. It's only God that can help us. I don't believe that the state should continue to borrow money to service overhead. I don't believe it, because if we begin to do it, recurrent expenditure. If we begin to do it, it will begin to, accumulate and accumulate over time. We will be unable to face it. So,
okay, Mr. Johnson Olabi, I think we have to stop there. I must also make it clear for my listener to understand that we tried to bring the NLC chairman here. We really tried so that he could answer questions per time, but he insisted on not coming for reasons best known to him. But we have his voice here. Fortunately, let's quickly listen to what he thinks about this whole situation, what Labour Union is doing about it.
Basic salary in Ondo State is not what the workforce bargained for. The situation of things made it so bad to that level. The question we should be asking ourselves: what led us to this basic salary? I want to believe that what led us to it is the government obligation to the financial institutions. How do I mean by government obligation? So many people have been mistaking the government obligation for many things. What I mean by government obligation is that before now, even before this administration, the government of Ondo State went to a capital market to obtain a loan of 27.5 billion naira, precisely by the past administration. As I'm talking to you, they are still deducting over 300 million naira from the FAC allocation to offset that bill. And you also remember that immediately this government came on board too, they also went to the capital market to obtain another loan of 30 billion naira. All these are deductible from the federal allocation accrued to Ondo State. Besides this, throughout last year, when we were having meeting, the government has been getting loans to do some things, and that was why throughout last year we only paid deduction twice, in July and in November. Those 2 times we were paid deduction, we have to sacrifice 1 month's salary in each of the months, and that was what led to 2 months arrears in the year 2020. So we now sat down that how are we going to continue like this? Well, I tell you, the local government has started percentage payment since February last year. And what it led to it is an increment in the salary due to this minimum wage implementation. We now sat down. For example, I'm earning 100,000 in a month. Okay, I told my employer, this time, who is the government of Ondo State? Okay, out of my 100,000, I don't want to eat with my 2 hands. Please be given 40,000 to a corporate society as a savings, so that after 6 months I can go there and obtain a loan, double of it, to at least to do the capital project, which like maybe building of your house or the likes. I'm expected to be paid 60. But government refused to remit that 40,000 to my cooperative, which ordinarily is part of salary. And that was when government said, we want to pay salary, we're asking for deduction. Deduction and salary are the same thing. In fact, deduction is just part of salary. There's no two way to it. Now, when I said, okay, Mr. Governor, if that is the case, we don't want net payment again. We pay no deduction. If it is 10% that it can take net, gross, let it be. So this month, we are coming to a meeting. Actually, after deduction of all the debts of Ondo State government, the debt include the bond by the immediate past administration, the bond by this same administration, then some World Bank loans that are payable, there are a lot of World Bank projects, and some overdrafts taken by Ondo State government, which we were shown evidence. We have 2.3 billion naira. It's not even up to half of 5.2. Okay, we say, okay, if we have to pay half, which is 2.6, we need additional 300 million naira. When I said, okay, look into your IGR, as is the internally generated, and then bring the naira out of it. That makes 2.6. The remaining IGR can be used to run the government. And this 50%, I must say, because I can see some misinformation going around in the social media. 50% I'm talking about, like for example, if I'm earning 100,000, 40,000 goes to my cooperative society. That means I'll get 60. So the 50% will be 50 of what goes to the cooperative, which is 20,000. 50 of the 60 that goes to me, which is 30,000. By the time we had the two together, I give 50,000, which is half of my salary. The same thing, if you're not doing it at all, you're not doing any cooperative, if your salary is just 100,000, you get 50,000. The only difference is that.
All right, that's NSA chairman. They're trying to explain exactly how this 50% salary works for those who have been misinformed before now. And we also, we went ahead to ask him what the position of NLC is, particularly about this development. He has this to say.
How do you tell somebody who has not been paid November salary in January 2021, 3 months after, and you are saying, even if I'm going to pay you, I can only pay 50%? Yes, it's not acceptable, and it's something that I cannot comprehend. Most of January is a very long year.
Okay, it is not acceptable. I think that settles your earlier position about what the Labour leaders feel about this new development. Okay, quickly, this really has a lot to do with residents of Ondo State. Like Mr. Alabi rightly said, this is a civil servant state. It is safe to call Ondo State a civil servant state because we have a good percentage of its residents in the civil service. So I'm going to be opening the pot now. Let people call in. What do you feel about this development? 50% salary payment to workers in Ondo State. How has it been with you? How have you been coping? Do you have anyone who is in the civil service? I'm sure civil servants will be. All right, let's just leave that. All right. Okay. 08162519991 or 908177879. Numbers to call this morning.
Hello.
Good morning. What's your name?
Good morning.
Good morning.
This, I think I must not come and for security purpose, but I'm coming from Edo State.
From Edo State?
Yeah, Edo State, yes.
Okay.
You see, when the government is coming back, has come at the second time, people were clamoring and many were supporting. You see, people who are in Nigeria, you can't bring politicians. Only few of them have people aside. Now, you can't tell me that no matter how you go in a state, that every day they generate money, every day is state. So, if that has its own political independence, a state that you have no money to pay civil servants. You have millions of civil servants in those states that you cannot pay every month. They have a politician, the commissioner, and they pay half salary. The state ambassador, and they pay half salary. Now, you increase the level at the university. Those teachers, those common workers in Ondo State, they have children who are in Adaba University. They look at the school fees today. Then we are paying 50%. How can they cope up How can they meet up with economy?
With the economic realities. Okay, that's a caller from Edo State, and he was trying to say that this new development is not acceptable at all. Hello, good morning.
Hello. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning, sir. What's your name?
Ayo from Ado.
From Ado Ekiti. Okay, go ahead.
Yes. I've been listening to your discussion. The labor between the labor and the government. It is just quite unfortunate.
All right, we lost that.
For the government to receive all the 18 local government allocation, and also receive allocation for state, because allocation for state is different from allocation to each local government. What the government of Ondo State have been doing with all the 18 local government allocation? What have they done with the allocation to state that they were unable to pay workers? They were not because they want to pay 30% of their salary. It's very shameful. It's uncalled for.
As much as we would love you to air your opinions on the program, we do not want you to use derogatory words. It's not called for, and we will not allow that on the program. Thank you all the same for your contribution all the way from Ado Ekiti. Hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning to you. What's your name? Your name again, please.
Evangelist Ojo.
Evangelist Ojo. Where are you calling us from?
From Akoko.
From Akoko?
Yes, Akoko.
Okay, from Ikaria. Please go ahead.
What I just want to say is the state government will not be able to pay the full salary for the workers. Not pay the 50% or 30%. If it is 1 or 2, you can pay 1. You pay it. Because this 30 or 50% is not okay. We are not happy with it.
All right, thank you very much. Let's come back to the studio. Mr. Ajose, it is known that whenever there are issues with salary payment, it is just natural that alone is a factor that could affect the productivity of workers at work. There could be some sort of discouragement and all that. As a former head of service, what would be your message to understate workers at this trying time?
Well, I must be seen at all times to support the genuine aspirations of workers. Having been with them for a long time, for 35 years, understand what their situation could be, what their plight is. I think that at the earliest possible time, a solution must be found to this problem. I understand what is going on. If government, for example, says this is how much I have, and that does not go far enough for the payment for the purpose of paying salaries, and that's a difficult situation. Even when you generate internal revenues, the revenues will not go at the same time as the need arises for you to have enough of them. So something must be done, and this is why I suggested that if government has to borrow money for the purpose of paying workers, let it do so. This will not be the first time. Papa Jashin did something like that in his own time when salaries were not being paid. He borrowed money from the Lagos state government with which to pay workers' salaries. Workers are very important. Imagine they don't go to work.
Now, this brings to mind, you were with Dr. Oluwasegun Mimiko.
Yes.
Yes, I remember vividly.
Not for the whole time. Not for the whole time.
Yes, exactly. But was there a time your administration, the then administration of Oluwasegun Mimiko, was faced with this sort of situation? You were there. I'm aware that towards the end of the administration there was something like that, but I think you were retired.
I had left.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
There was no time the government was faced with such challenge during that period.
Not when I was there. I spent 3.5 years with Governor Mimiko. What you're talking about, I think, happened mainly in the second term. That's the second half of his administration.
Okay, how would you advise workers now?
My advice to workers really is difficult. I cannot advise them to go without salaries or to go with a percentage of their salaries, which may not go very far in the circumstance. They may have, as it is, they may have to manage a difficult situation, make the best of it. But I've also said that at the earliest opportunity, government should continue to pay them the whole of their salaries. Otherwise, where do we go from here?
Okay, that said, Mr. Olabi, what's your advice to workers?
Well, my advice to the workers, just like Mr. Joseph said, is for the meantime, to bear with the government in the interest of industrial harmony, just like we mentioned before. I know that this situation will not last forever. And as I speak to you, I know that the government also will not be so comfortable with it to say, let us sit down, cross our legs and watch workers take 50%. So if this government have been understanding enough to have tried to clear backlog of salaries that it met when it came on board, I know that they will do much more to clear whatever they owe, the salaries they owe workers any moment from now. So the workers also on their part have been tolerant enough, but they still just had to do a little more in the interest of peace.
Okay, on Tuesday, the National Medical Association also started an industrial action occasioned by the current salary regime and unfavorable working conditions, according to them. We do hope that would be called off anytime soon. Mr. Showore, we have to go on the program, but before we go, what's your message to both parties involved?
Yeah, my message would be the exact word that Mr. Governor told the organized labor in Ondo State when we took the mantle of leadership. We had a meeting then, and the governor asked them, Dr. Olumiko, owe you 7 months? He said, how? Why did you allow a government to owe you 7 months? Workers in Ondo State don't allow government to owe you. And to the government, be open, be sincere, be transparent. We cannot afford to make our state not to work. Owing worker salary is like killing our economy, like killing our state. And the moment you allow that to be protected, our economy will be down. And the moment the economy is down, both workers and non-workers will be affected.
All right, on that note, we come to the end of the program for today. And for those who do not know, Ondo State is 45 years, and that has been celebrated. Low-key, I guess, but that's the 45 exactly. Yeah. So we say congratulations to Ondo State on the occasion of its anniversary, 45th anniversary. And we do hope that from here it's going to be to greater heights. I want to thank my studio guests for coming. Mr. Oluwasegun, former head of service Ondo State. Thank you very much for coming, sir.
Thank you, madam.
I'm a member of APC now.
Is this a member of APC?
Yes.
He used to be a member of Labour Party.
Labour Party. I wasn't a member of Labour Party. I wasn't a member of any party until about now.
So we should expect to see more of you in the political landscape. Maybe so. Maybe
there are different categories, or at least two major categories of people in politics. You have the professional politicians.
Okay.
I am not one.
Oh.
I'm a professional in politics.
All right. Thank you very much for coming all the same. And I also want to thank my before PDP friend who is now an APC fellow. Thank you very much for coming, Mr. Alabi.
Thank you very much.
And we hope that next time you would also oblige us.
Yeah.
And to Mr. Showore, thank you for coming. It's nice to have you join us. Next week, Thursday, we will be back, God willing. And we want to say this to workers. This too shall pass. Good morning.